Odessa Whatfold stood frozen at her kitchen window, holding a dish towel that had gone limp in her hands. Outside her small apartment building in Sunnyside, 6 black SUVs had pulled up to the curb, long, shiny, and silent, like something out of a movie she couldn't afford to go see. Men in dark suits stepped out. They moved fast. They moved like they owned the ground they walked on. And then the middle car door opened, and out stepped a man in a suit that probably cost more than everything Odessa owned put together. She knew that face. She knew that walk. Her knees nearly buckled. Because the man stepping out of that expensive car, surrounded by security guards who scanned the street like soldiers, was the same broke, quiet handyman she had been feeding dinner every single night for 3 months. The same man she had lent her late father's old work boots to because his shoes had been stolen. The same man she had trusted, the same man she had started to love. The dish towel slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. "Nah," she whispered to the empty kitchen. No, who are ya?" But to understand how Odessa ended up standing in that kitchen, her whole world crashing down around her. We have to go back, all the way back, 3 months earlier, to the night she stopped to help a stranger nobody else would even look at. This is a story about pride, about pain, about the kind of love that shows up when you least expect it, and the kind of betrayal that cuts the deepest because it comes from someone you let inside your heart. If you've ever given someone everything you had, if you've ever wondered whether people love you for who you are or for what you can give them, this story is for you. So before we dive in, do me one favor. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because trust me, you are not going to want to miss how this one ends. Now, let's begin. 3 months earlier, the sun was going down over Houston, Texas, painting the sky a tired shade of orange. Odessa Whatfold walked with her head down, her feet aching inside shoes she'd worn for 2 years too long. She just finished her shift at the hospital cafeteria downtown, and in a few hours she'd have to be back out again to clean office buildings until midnight. 2 jobs. 1 son. No help. That was Odessa's whole life in one sentence. She was 34 years old, but on nights like this she felt double that. Her back hurt. Her feet hurt. And somewhere deep down, though she'd never admit it out loud, her heart hurt too, because Odessa Whatfold was tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. As she walked toward the bus stop, she passed an alley near a downtown parking garage. And that's when she heard it, a groan. Low, painful, most folks kept walking. It was getting dark. This was a rough part of downtown. Everybody knew you didn't stop for strange sounds coming out of dark alleys, but Odessa wasn't most folks. She slowed down. She squinted into the shadows. And there, slumped against a brick wall, was a man. He was tall, she could tell that even with him sitting down. His clothes were nice once, but now they were torn and dirty. His face was bruised. And his feet, Odessa's stomach twisted, his feet were bare. Somebody had even taken his shoes. Odessa called out carefully, keeping her distance. "You all right, Musk?" This man lifted his head slowly. His eyes were dazed, like he wasn't sure where he was. He started, then winced. "I got jumped. They took everything, my wallet, my phone, my..." He looked down at his bare feet and let out a bitter little laugh. "My shoes, who takes a man's shoes?" Odessa should have kept walking. She had $30 to her name until Friday. She had a son at home. She had another job to get to. She had no business getting involved, but she looked at that man sitting there, robbed of everything, and something in her just wouldn't let her leave. "Can you stand?" she asked, stepping closer. "Think so," he said. She helped him up. He was heavy and taller than she'd guessed, easily over 6 feet. He leaned on her, and together they stumbled out of the alley into the fading light. Now she could see him clearly. He was a handsome man under all those bruises. Dark skin, strong jaw, tired eyes that held something she couldn't quite name. Sadness, maybe, or loneliness. "You need a hospital," Odessa said. "Nah," he said quickly. Too quickly. "No hospitals, no police, please, I just need a minute." Odessa frowned. A man who got robbed but didn't want the police. That was strange. But she'd learned a long time ago that everybody was carrying something. Everybody had their reasons. "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated, just for a second. "Thudpuss," he finally said. "But people call me Thud." "Well, Thud," Odessa said, planting her hands on her hips. "You can't just sit downtown all night with no shoes and no money. You got somewhere to go." Thud looked at her, and for a long moment he didn't say anything. Then quietly he shook his head. And that right there was the moment that changed both their lives forever. Because Odessa Whatfold, who had almost nothing, looked at a man who had even less and made a decision. "Come on," she sighed. "You can rest at my place for a couple hours, get some food in you, then we'll figure it out." What Odessa didn't know, what she couldn't have possibly known, was that the man she was helping wasn't broke at all. Thudpuss Cross was one of the richest men in America. The bus ride to Sunnysud was quiet. Thud sat by the window, staring out at the city like he was seeing it for the first time. Truthfully, he kind of was. It had been years since Thudpuss Cross had ridden a public bus. Years since anyone had spoken to him without wanting something. He hadn't lied about getting robbed. That part was true. He'd slipped away from his security detail earlier that day, something he did sometimes, when the weight of his life got too heavy. He just wanted a few hours to walk around like a normal person. To breathe, instead, 3 men had cornered him in that alley and taken everything. His phone, his wallet, his watch, even his shoes. And in that moment, with nothing to prove who he was, Thudpuss Cross, the man whose name was on skyscrapers, had become just another man in an alley that the whole world walked past, except one woman. He glanced sideways at Odessa. She'd fallen asleep sitting up, her head bobbing gently with the movement of the bus. Even asleep, she looked tired. He noticed the worn spots on her shoes, the tiny hole in her sleeve she'd tried to stitch closed. This was a woman who had nothing to spare, and she'd spared it anyway, for a stranger. Something tightened in Thud's chest that he hadn't felt in a very, very long time. When the bus reached their stop, he gently touched her shoulder. "Hey, we're here." Odessa jolted awake, immediately embarrassed. "Oh, I dozed off. Come on, it's this way." Her apartment building was old but clean. As they climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, a voice called out from a doorway. "Odessa Whitfield. Who is that man?" An older woman poked her head out, round face, church hat still on from a prayer meeting, eyes sharp as a hawk. "Evening, Miss Erlene," Odessa said. "This is Thad. He's had a rough night. He's just resting up a bit." Miss Erlene looked Thad up and down like she was reading his whole life story. "MMHM," she said slowly. "A rough night. In my day we didn't bring strange men home, but the Lord says love thy neighbor, so I suppose." She narrowed her eyes at Thad. "You behave yourself, young man. I sleep with one eye open and a Bible in one hand and a frying pan in the other." Thad, despite everything, the bruises, the exhaustion, the strangeness of it all, actually smiled. "Yes, ma'am, I believe you." "Good," Miss Erlene said, and shut her door. Odessa laughed softly as she unlocked her own door. "Don't mind her. She's nosy, but she's got a good heart. Watch my boy grow up. Come on in." Apartment was tiny. A small living room, a little kitchen, 2 bedrooms crammed together, but it was warm, it was clean. There were photos on the walls and a blanket folded neatly on the couch. It felt like a home. And Thad, who lived in a mansion in River Oaks with 14 rooms he never even walked into, suddenly realized his own house had never once felt like this. "Silas," Odessa called out. "Meet somebody." A bedroom door opened and out stepped a teenage boy. 15 maybe, lanky, watchful, holding a cracked laptop under one arm like it was the most precious thing he owned. His eyes went straight to Thad, and they weren't friendly, they were suspicious. "Who's this?" the boy asked flatly. "This is Thad," Odessa said. "He's a guest. Thad, this is my son Silas." Silas didn't offer his hand. He just studied Thad with those sharp, careful eyes. "You look like you got hit by a truck," he said. "Silas," Odessa scolded. "It's all right," Thad chuckled. "He's not wrong, I feel like I did too." But something interesting happened in that moment. As Silas turned to go back to his room, Thad's eyes dropped to that cracked laptop screen just for a second, and what he saw made his heart skip. Lines of code, complex code. The kind of code that Thad's own engineers he paid enormous salaries, struggled with every single day, on a 15-year-old's broken laptop. But before Thad could get a good look, Silas snapped the laptop shut and disappeared into his room. Thad blinked, telling himself he must have imagined it. He was wrong. Over a simple dinner of rice, beans, and cornbread, Thad learned about Odessa's life. He learned she worked 2 jobs. He learned her husband had left 9 years ago, promising a better life and delivering nothing. He learned she'd once dreamed of being a nurse, had even started nursing school before she'd had to drop out to take care of Sullahs. "You ever think about going back?" Thad asked gently. Odessa laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "With what time, with what money?" She shook her head. "That dream's dead and buried, Thud. Now I just focus on giving Sullahs a shot at something better." Seems like a smart kid. Odessa's whole face changed, lit up like a sunrise. "Oh, he's more than smart. That boy's got a mind like I've never seen, but he hides it. Won't tell nobody. I think he's scared of standing out, or maybe he's just tired of watching me struggle and doesn't want to ask for anything." Thud said nothing, but he thought about that code on the laptop screen, and he wondered. That night, Odessa made up the couch for him. "I don't have much," she said, handing him a blanket. "But you're welcome to stay till you get back on your feet." Thud looked at this woman, this stranger who owed him nothing, who had every reason to keep walking but hadn't. "What?" he asked quietly. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Odessa paused at the doorway. She thought about it for a moment. "Because somebody's stuff helped me a long time ago," she said, "and nobody did. So I decided that whenever I get the chance to be the person I needed, I take it, even when I don't have much. Especially when I don't have much." And with that, she went to bed. Thud lay on that lumpy couch, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in more years than he could count, Thudpuss Cross, the billionaire, the CEO, the man who had everything, felt something he thought he'd lost forever. He felt seen, not for his money, not for his power, just seen as a man. And right there, in that tiny apartment in Sunnyside, he made a decision that would either be the best or the worst choice of his entire life. He wasn't going to tell them the truth. Not yet. For just a little while longer, he wanted to be Thud. Just Thud. The man with no shoes. He had no idea how badly that one choice would come back to haunt him. Now, this is the part where I have to stop and ask you something. Have you ever helped somebody when you had nothing to give? Have you ever been kind to a stranger just because it was the right thing to do? Drop a comment below and tell me about it. I read every single one, and I want to hear your story. And if Odessa's heart is already touching yours, if you're already rooting for this woman who gives everything she has, then do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next is going to break your heart and put it back together. Now let's keep going. The next 3 weeks changed everything. Thud stayed. He couldn't quite explain why, and neither could Odessa, but he stayed. And to earn his keep, he started fixing things, the leaky faucet that had been dripping for 2 years. Fixed. The wobbly stair on the 3rd floor that Miss Ullen always complained about. Fixed. The broken heater in the building's lobby. Fixed. Now, here's the funny part. Thudpuss Cross had no idea how to actually fix any of these things. He'd built a billion-dollar company, but he'd never once held a wrench in his life. So he did what any brilliant man would do. He watched videos on Sulliza's laptop late at night and taught himself, then pretended he'd known all along. The results were interesting. The first time he tried to fix the faucet, he flooded the entire kitchen and had to run to Miss Ullen's for towels. She stood in her doorway watching him mop up water with a look of deep disappointment. "Lud have mercy," she muttered. "A grown man who can't fix a faucet." "What kind of handyman are ya?" "A learning one," Thud said, on his knees in a puddle. Miss Ullen handed him more towels, shaking her head. Chum, a learning one, Jesus, take the wheel." But slowly he got better. And more importantly, he started to belong. Sulla's remained the hardest to win over. The boy watched Thud constantly, waiting for him to slip up, waiting for him to prove he was just like every other man who disappointed his mother. But Thud was patient. One evening, he found Sulla's hunched over that cracked laptop, frustrated, muttering to himself. "Problem?" Thud asked, sitting down nearby. "Nothing you'd understand," Sulla's said without looking up. "Trummy." Sulla's rolled his eyes, but then, almost to prove Thud couldn't possibly understand, he turned the laptop around. "It's a coding problem. A big company put it out online, said nobody's been able to solve it. There's this flaw in their system and Thud leaned in. His whole body went cold. He knew that code. He knew that flaw, because that flaw was in a system built by his own company, Meridian Systems, a problem that his highest-paid engineers had been struggling to fix for 6 months, and this 15-year-old boy in a tiny Sunnyside apartment had almost solved it. "Sullas," Thud said slowly, trying to keep his voice steady. "How long have you been working on this?" "A couple days," Sullas shrugged. "A couple days." Thud stared at the screen. His engineers. 6 months, this boy, 2 days, his hands were actually trembling. "Sullas," he whispered. "Who taught you thus?" This boy looked at him, and for the first time there was no suspicion in his eyes, just something quiet, something honest. "Nobody," Sullas said. "I taught myself. From the library computers, mostly. Mom doesn't know how much I—" He stopped. "She's got enough to worry about." Thud looked at this boy, this brilliant, humble, hidden boy, and in that moment, Thudpuss Cross understood that he had stumbled into something far bigger than a place to hide. He had stumbled into a gift, a once-in-a-generation mind, a boy who could change the world, and a mother who had sacrificed her own dreams to protect him. Thud made a silent promise, right then and there. "I'm going to change your lives, both of you, whatever it takes." Somewhere across the city, in a gleaming office tower in downtown Houston, another man was about to make a very different kind of promise. A man from Thud's past. a man who had waited 10 long years for revenge, and when he discovered what Thud had found in that little apartment, he was going to try to destroy it all. The morning after Thad discovered Silas's genius, he woke up on that lumpy couch before the sun came up. He couldn't sleep. His mind was racing. He lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about the boy in the next room, thinking about that code, thinking about what it all meant. Thaddeus Cross had built an empire by spotting talent. It was his gift. He could look at a person and see exactly what they were capable of. And in 15-year-old Silas Whitfield, he saw something he had only seen a handful of times in his entire life. He saw a mind that came around once in a generation. But there was a problem. A big one. Because to help Silas the way the boy deserved to be helped, Thad would have to reveal who he really was. He would have to tell Odessa the truth. And every time he imagined that conversation, his stomach twisted into knots. Because for the first time in years, Thad was happy. Genuinely happy. Nobody in that apartment wanted his money because nobody knew he had any. Odessa didn't laugh at his jokes because he was powerful. Silas didn't respect him because of his name. Miss Erling didn't fuss over him because of his fortune. They liked him, or in Silas's case, tolerated him for exactly who he was. And Thad was terrified that the moment the truth came out, all of that would disappear, so he made a choice. Again, he would wait, just a little longer. He'd find the right moment. He didn't know it yet, but there would never be a right moment. Meanwhile, across the city in a shining office tower in downtown Houston, a man named Ronan Blackwood was staring at his phone, his jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Now, let me tell you about Ronan Blackwood. 10 years ago, Ronan and Thad had been best friends. More than that, they'd been partners. Two young men with nothing but a dream and a laptop, building a company in a cramped garage. They'd stayed up all night together. They'd shared cold pizza and big ideas. They'd promised each other they'd change the world. And then it all fell apart. When the company, Meridian Systems, finally exploded into success, there was a fight over who deserved the credit. Ronan believed he'd built the foundation of everything. Thad believed Ronan had walked away when things got hard, then come crawling back when the money started rolling in. The friendship shattered. Ronan left. And for 10 long years, he had watched Thaddeus Cross climb higher and higher, becoming a household name, a billionaire, a legend. While Ronan built his own company, Apex Grid, smaller, always second, always in Thad's shadow. And with every passing year, Ronan's bitterness had grown into something dark and heavy, something that kept him up at night, revenge. So when Ronan got a phone call that morning from one of his people, telling him that Thaddeus Cross had gone completely off the grid, no security, no phone, no public appearances for weeks, Ronan felt a slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "Find him," Ronan said into the phone. "Wherever he's hiding, whatever he's doing, I want to know everything, because if Thaddeus Cross is vulnerable..." He leaned back in his chair. "Then this is the moment I've waited 10 years for." Back in Sunnyside, life had settled into a rhythm that felt to Thad almost like a dream. He'd wake up early and make breakfast badly, but he was learning. He'd walk Silas partway to the bus stop, and slowly the boy had started to open up, talking about computers, about the future, about things he'd never told anyone. In the evenings, when Odessa came home exhausted from her double shifts, Thad would have dinner waiting. Simple food. Nothing fancy. But she'd sink into a chair with a sigh of relief that told him it meant the world. And little by little, something was growing between Thad and Odessa. Something neither of them said out loud, but both of them felt. It was in the way she smiled when he told a bad joke. It was in the way he watched her when she wasn't looking. It was in the small, quiet moments, washing dishes side by side, laughing about Miss Erling's endless suspicions, talking late into the night about nothing and everything. One evening, they sat together on the fire escape looking out over the Houston skyline. In the far distance, the lights of downtown glittered. Somewhere in that direction stood the Meridian Systems tower, Thad's tower, but Odessa didn't know that. "You ever look at those big buildings," Odessa said softly, "and wonder about the people in them, the rich folks, what their lives are like?" Thad's heart clenched. "Sometimes," he said carefully. "I bet they're happy," she said, "never worrying about bills. Never scared of getting a call that says your electricity's getting shut off. Never having to choose between medicine and groceries." Thad was quiet for a long moment. "I don't think money makes people happy," he finally said. "I think it just changes what you're sad about." Odessa turned to look at him, surprised. "That's real deep for a handyman who flooded my whole kitchen last month." Thad laughed. "Hey, I fixed that faucet eventually." After you nearly drowned us all, she teased. They both laughed. And then the laughter faded and they were just looking at each other. Close, quiet for a moment. Thad almost told her everything. The truth was right there on his lips. Odessa, there's something you need to know. I'm not who you think I am. Then Silas leaned out the window. Mom, we're out of milk again. And the moment shattered, Thad let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Tomorrow, he told himself. I'll tell her tomorrow. Wouldn't get the chance. The next day, the cracks started to show. It began small. Odessa asked Thad to run to the laundromat with a basket of clothes. A simple task. Anyone could do it, except Thad stood in front of the machines for 10 full minutes, completely lost. He had no idea how they worked. He'd never washed a load of laundry in his life. He'd always had people for that. A young woman finally took pity on him. You gotta put the quarters in, sir, then pick your cycle. Right, Thad said, fumbling. Of course, the quarters. When he got home, Odessa noticed the clothes were still slightly damp and smelled faintly of soap he'd used way too much of. Thad, she said slowly, holding up a shirt, how does a grown man not know how to do laundry? I always sent it out, he said, then immediately realized his mistake. Odessa raised an eyebrow. Sent it out on what money? I mean, before things got bad for me. Thad recovered quickly. Long story. Odessa let it go. But something in the back of her mind filed it away. Then there were his hands. One night, as they sat close together, Odessa took his hand in hers, tracing his palm. Your hands are soft, she said quietly. Real soft, for a man who says he's done manual labor his whole life. Thad froze. I moisturize. Odessa laughed, but she wasn't quite convinced. MMHM. And then came the moment that changed everything. They were downtown one afternoon, walking near the hospital where Odessa worked, when a man in an expensive suit walked past. He glanced at Thad, then did a double take. His face went pale. Mr. Cross, the man stammered. Sir, is that? I'm so sorry to bother you, sir. Thad's whole body went rigid. He grabbed Odessa's arm. You've got the wrong person, he said sharply to the man and quickly steered Odessa away. Odessa looked back over her shoulder. The man was still standing there, staring, confused, almost frightened. Thad, Odessa said slowly. Why did that man call you Mr. Cross, and why did he look like he'd seen a ghost? I don't know, Thad said, but his voice was too fast, too tight. Probably mistook me for somebody. Odessa didn't say anything else, but that night, lying in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about it. The soft hands, the laundry, the way that important-looking man had trembled when he saw Thad. The way Thad refused hospitals and police that very first night. Pieces of a puzzle she couldn't quite put together. Who was this man she'd let into her home? Into her son's life, into her heart. Now hold on. Before we continue, I have to ask you something. Do you think Odessa is starting to figure it out? Do you think Thud should just tell her the truth before it's too late? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I want to know what you would do if you were in Thud's shoes. And listen, if the suspense is getting to you, if you can feel this whole thing about to explode, smash that like button and make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next is the moment everything falls apart. Trust me. You're not ready. Let's keep going. While Odessa's suspicions grew, Runnin' Blackwood's investigators were closing in. It hadn't taken them long. A billionaire can't stay invisible forever. Someone always sees something. Someone always talks. That same man in the suit, the one who'd recognized Thud downtown, had mentioned it to a colleague. The colleague mentioned it to someone else. And within days, the whisper reached Runnin's people. Thudpuss Cross has been seen in Sunnyside, living in a working-class apartment, under a fake name. Runnin couldn't believe his luck. He sent his investigators to dig deeper, and what they found made Runnin's cruel heart nearly stop with excitement. They found Sulla's. They pulled the boy's anonymous online activity. They traced the code. And they realized, just like Thud had, that this 15-year-old kid was a genius unlike anything the tech world had ever seen. More than that. They discovered that Sulla's had solved a flaw in Meridian's system. Thud's system. Runnin sat in his dark office, staring at the files, and slowly a plan formed in his mind. A cruel, brilliant, devastating plan. Runnin murmured to himself. Thudpuss Cross has found himself a little family, a woman he loves, a boy genius who could be worth billions. Huss smiled. Then I'll take all of it. I'll take the boy right out from under him, and I'll destroy Thud's reputation while I'm at it. Let the whole world see the mighty Thudpuss Cross for what he really is, a liar who tricked a poor single mother. I picked up his phone. Me a meeting with the boy, he said. And get me a reporter. It's time Thudpuss Cross paid for what he took from me. Days later, Sulla's came home from school buzzing with excitement. "Mom, Thud, you're not gonna believe this," he said, dropping his backpack. "Some big tech company, Apex Grid, they reached out to me. Online. They said they saw my work and they want to offer me a scholarship. A full ride, college, everything paid for. They want me to come in and meet with them." Odessa's hands flew to her mouth. "Sulla's baby, that's incredible, oh my god." But Thud felt his blood run cold. Apex Grid, Runnan's company. "Sulla's," Thud said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Who exactly reached out to you? What did they say?" "I don't know, some guy. He said the CEO himself wanted to meet me. He said I'm special." He said, Sulla's paused, seeing the look on Thud's face. "Why, what's wrong?" Odessa noticed it too. "Thud, what is that?" Thud's mind was spinning. Runnan knew. Somehow Runnan knew about Sulla's. And if Runnan knew about Sulla's, then Runnan knew about Thud. And this scholarship was a trap, a way to steal the boy and use him against Thud. He had to say something. He had to warn them. But how could he explain it without revealing everything? How could he tell them that the CEO of Apex Grid was his enemy, without admitting that he, Thud, was the billionaire founder of Meridian Systems? "Sulla's," Thud said carefully. "I don't think you should meet with them. Something's not right. Companies don't reach out to 15-year-olds like this. It could be dangerous." Sulla's face darkened. "Dangerous? Are you serious right now? This is the first good thing that's ever happened to me and you're telling me not to do what?" "Sulla's, what do you even care?" Sulla's snapped. "You're not my dad. You're just some guy who showed up on our couch. You don't get to tell me what to do with my luff." "Sulla's," Odessa gasped. "Nah, Mom, I'm serious." Sulla's was shaking now, all his old suspicion rushing back. "We don't even know anything about him. He's got soft hands and he can't do laundry and random people call him weird names on the street and now he wants to ruin my one chunsa." This room went silent. Odessa slowly turned to Thud. Her eyes had changed. All those little pieces, the ones she'd been filing away, they were coming together now. "Thud," she said quietly. "Who are ya?" Thud's heart pounded. This was it. The moment he'd been dreading. He opened his mouth, and that's when there was a heavy knock at the door, 3 sharp knocks. Odessa, still staring at Thud, went to answer it. She opened the door, and standing there was a man in an expensive suit, flanked by 2 others. He was handsome in a cold way, with sharp eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. "Good evening," the man said smoothly. "My name is Runnan Blackwood. I'm the CEO of Apex Grid." His eyes drifted past Odessa and landed on Thud. His smile widened into something vicious. "And I'm here to see my old friend, isn't that right?" "Thudpuss," Odessa's breath caught. She looked at Runnan, then at Thud, then back at Runnan. "Ya two know each other," she whispered. Runnan laughed, a low, cruel sound. "Know each other? Oh, my dear, we built an empire together." He stepped inside without being invited, looking around the tiny apartment with obvious disgust. "Though I have to say, Thud, this is quite a step down from your mansion in River Oaks, all 14 rooms of it." Words hit Odessa like a slap. "Mansion, River Oaks, 14 rooms. What is he talking about?" Odessa said, her voice trembling. She turned to Thud and her whole body was shaking now. "Thud, what is he talking about?" Thud stood there, frozen, every excuse dead in his throat. And Runnan, seeing his chance, delivered the killing blow. He pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward Odessa. On it was a photo, Thud, in a perfect suit, standing in front of a gleaming skyscraper. Below it, in bold letters, was a headline. Thudpuss Cross, billionaire founder and CEO of Meridian Systems, net worth $12 billion. Odessa stared at the screen. The whole world seemed to go silent. 12 billion, she whispered. She looked up at Thud. At the man she'd fed when she had almost nothing. At the man she'd given her father's boots. At the man she'd let into her home, her son's life, her heart. At the man who had lied to her every single day. "A billionaire," she said, her voice cracked. "You had $12 billion this whole time, and you let me feed you. You let me give you the little I had. You let me." Her voice broke completely. "You let me fall in love with you, while you were lying to my face." "Odessa, please," Thud stepped toward her. "I can explain, I never meant." "Dunt." She backed away from him, tears streamed down her face. "Don't you touch me." And then a terrible thought crossed her mind, and her stomach turned to ice. She looked at Sulla's, then back at Thud, then at Runnan, who was watching all of this unfold with a satisfied smile. "Sulla's," Odessa said slowly, her voice hollow. "You knew about Sulla's, both of you, you knew he was." She stared at Thud. "Was that what this was about, my son? Was my baby just some business deal to ya?" "Nah," Thud started. "Was any of it real?" Odessa screamed. "Was any of it real, or was my son just some prize the two of you were fighting?" Chuckled softly in the corner. "Now that," he said, "is a very good question." The apartment was dead silent. Dessa stood in the middle of her living room, tears streaming down her face, waiting for an answer. Thad opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Ronan Blackwood stepped forward smoothly like a snake gliding through grass. "Me answer that for you, ma'am," Ronan said, his voice like silk. "Yes, your son is a prize. He's the most valuable young mind in the country. And your friend here." He gestured at Thad with disgust. "He found him first. He crawled into your home, ate your food, won your trust, also he could scoop up your boy before anyone else did. That's the kind of man Thaddeus Cross is. That's the man who left me with nothing 10 years ago." "That's a lie," Thad said, his voice low and dangerous. "Every word out of your mouth is a lie, Ronan, just like it's always been." But Odessa wasn't looking at Ronan anymore. She was looking at Thad, and her eyes were breaking his heart into 1,000 pieces. "I don't care whose story is true," Odessa whispered. "I only care that you lied to me. That's the part I can't forgive." She wiped her face. "I opened my home to you when I had nothing, and you looked me in my eyes every day and lied." "Out," she said. "Please, just let me." "Get out," she screamed. Thad flinched like he'd been struck. He looked at Silas, who wouldn't meet his eyes. He looked at Odessa, who had turned her back to him. And Thaddeus Cross, the man worth $12 billion, walked out of that tiny apartment with nothing. Ronan watched him go, then turned to Silas with a warm, fatherly smile. "Son," Ronan said gently, "I know that was a lot, but I'm here to help you. That man used you. I would never do that. Come to Apex Grid. Let me give you the future you deserve. The future your mother could never afford to give you." And that last line, "the future your mother could never afford to give you," cut Odessa deep. Because it was the exact fear that had haunted her every single night of her life. She saw Silas hesitate. She saw him look at Ronan's expensive suit, his confident smile, his promises of everything. "Silas," Odessa said quietly. "Baby, don't." But Silas was 15 and he was hurt and he was tired of watching his mother struggle. And Ronan was offering him the whole world. "I need to think," Silas mumbled and disappeared into his room. Ronan smiled and handed Odessa a business card. "The meeting is tomorrow at noon. Apex Grid Tower downtown, bring the boy or don't. But if you love your son, you'll let him take this chance." He tipped his head. "Good evening, ma'am." And then he was gone too, leaving Odessa alone in her broken, silent apartment. She sank to the floor and cried like she hadn't cried in years. That night, Thad stood outside on the sidewalk, staring up at the apartment window. He didn't want to leave. Every part of him screamed to go back up there. But he'd learned one thing in his 40 years of life. You can't force someone to trust you again. You can only prove you were worth trusting in the first place. His phone, a new one, since his old one had been stolen, buzzed in his pocket. It was Greta Lindqvist, his chief of staff. The one person in his real world who actually cared about him. Greta was a blunt, no-nonsense Swedish-American woman who had worked with Thad for 15 years. She was the only one who knew he'd been off the grid. "Thaddeus," Greta's sharp voice came through the phone. "Do you have any idea what is happening? Ronan Blackwood just called a press conference for tomorrow afternoon. He is telling reporters that you, and I quote, deceived a poor single mother to steal her child's talent. The story is spreading. Your reputation is going to be destroyed by tomorrow night." Thad closed his eyes. "I don't care about my reputation, Greta." There was a long pause. "I have known you for 15 years, Greta said slowly, "and you have never once said those words. Thaddeus, what has happened to you?" Thad looked up at that apartment window one more time. "I found something, Greta," he said quietly. "Something money can't buy, and I lost it because I was too scared to be honest." Another pause. "Well," Greta said, and her voice softened just slightly, "then perhaps it is time to stop being scared. What do you need from me?" Thad's eyes narrowed. A plan was forming. "Me everything on Ronan's scholarship contract," he said. "Every clause, every trap, and Greta." He took a breath. "I think it's time I stopped hiding who I am." Now here's where things get interesting. Because while Thad was making his plan, Odessa Whitfield was making one of her own. She sat at her kitchen table late that night, Ronan's business card in her trembling hands, replaying everything in her mind. And something was bothering her, something she couldn't shake. Ronan had said he wanted to help Silas, that he'd give her son a future. But Odessa had spent 34 years surviving on the streets of Houston, and she knew one thing better than anyone: nobody gives you something for nothing. She thought back to that moment in the apartment. The way Ronan had looked at Silas, not like a boy, but like a thing. A prize, a weapon, the exact word he'd used. And the way he'd looked at Thad with pure, personal hatred. This wasn't about helping Silas. This was about a war between two men. And her son was just the ammunition. Odessa remembered something else, too. Something small. When Ronan had first walked in, he'd been holding his phone loosely, and she'd caught a glimpse of the screen before he'd flipped it to show her the headline. There had been a text message open, a message to a reporter, and the message had said, "Tomorrow we destroy Cross. The mother is the perfect angle. Poor, desperate, easy to manipulate. She'll do whatever we say." To manipulate. She'll do whatever we say. Odessa's blood boiled. They thought she was stupid. They thought she was just a poor, desperate single mother who could be played like a fiddle well. They were about to learn exactly who Odessa Whitfield was. She stood up, wiped her tears, and squared her shoulders. "Silas," she called out. "Get dressed, baby. We're going to that meeting tomorrow after all." Silas came out of his room, surprised. "We are." "Oh, we are," Odessa said, and there was fire in her eyes now. "But not for the reason he thinks. Hold on. Before we get to the showdown, I need you to do something for me. I need you to comment right now and tell me, did you see this coming? Did you think Odessa was going to fall for Ronan's trap? Or did you know this queen was too smart for that? And if you're proud of Odessa, if you're ready to watch this mother go to war for her son, smash that like button and let me know you're Team Odessa all the way. Because what happens next is everything." The next day at noon, the Apex Grid Tower in downtown Houston was buzzing. Ronan Blackwood had done more than set up a meeting. He'd set up a spectacle. Reporters filled the lobby. Cameras were everywhere. He'd invited the press, ready to announce that he'd rescued a genius child from the manipulative Thaddeus Cross. It was going to be his greatest victory. 10 years of revenge, all leading to this moment. When Odessa and Silas walked in, Ronan practically glowed. "Ah, there they are." He announced loudly so all the cameras could hear. "The brave mother and her brilliant son. Come, come, let's talk about your future." He led them to a stage set up in the lobby in front of all the reporters. He wanted this public. He wanted the whole world to see. Odessa held Silas's hand and walked up onto that stage, calm as still water. "Now," Ronan said into a microphone, beaming at the cameras, "this brave young man was nearly taken advantage of by a very powerful, very dishonest billionaire. But Apex Grid believes in protecting talent, not exploiting it. So today, I'd like to offer Silas Whitfield a full scholarship and a position at our company. Ma'am," he turned to Odessa, holding out a fancy pen and a contract, "if you'll just sign here, we can give your son the life you never could." Cameras zoomed in. This was the moment, Ronan's moment. Odessa looked at the contract, then she looked at the pen, then she looked at Ronan and she smiled. "You know," Odessa said, her voice clear and steady, loud enough for every reporter to hear, "you keep saying that. The life I never could give him. Like I'm nothing, like I'm just some poor woman you can wave money at." Ronan's smile flickered. "I only meant—" "I know exactly what you meant," Odessa said. She turned to the cameras. "You see, this man thinks I'm stupid. He thinks because I'm poor, because I work 2 jobs, because I don't wear fancy suits, that I can be played." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Last night," Odessa continued, "I got a call from someone who works in this very building, somebody with a conscience, somebody who was tired of what Mr. Blackwood does to people, and they sent me this." Ronan's face went pale. "What is that?" Odessa unfolded the paper and held it up to the cameras. "It's a copy of the real contract," she said. "Not this pretty one he's showing you all, the real one, the one buried in the fine print." She looked at the reporters. "This contract says that if my son signs, Apex Grid owns everything he ever creates, for life, every idea, every invention. My 15-year-old baby would sign away his entire future and this man would own it all while my son gets nothing but a fancy title and empty promises." Lobby erupted. Reporters started shouting questions. Cameras flashed. "That's not true," Ronan sputtered. She's lying." "Am I?" Odessa said calmly. She reached into her purse again and pulled out something else, her phone. "Because I also have this, a screenshot of a message you sent to a reporter yesterday. Would you like me to read it out loud, or should I let everyone see it themselves?" She turned the phone to the cameras, and there it was, Ronan's own words. "Tomorrow we destroy Cross. The mother is the perfect angle, poor, desperate, easy to manipulate. She'll do whatever we say." Lobby went insane. Ronan Blackwood stood frozen on his own stage, in front of his own cameras, exposed by the very woman he thought was too poor and too desperate to be a threat. "I may be poor, Mr. Blackwood," Odessa said, her voice ringing out over the chaos, "but I am not for sale, and neither is my son. There isn't enough money in this world to buy his soul." And that's when the elevator doors at the back of the lobby opened, and out stepped Thaddeus Cross, but not the handyman, not the man with no shoes. He was in a perfect suit, walking tall, flanked by Greta Lindqvist and a team of lawyers. He looked exactly like what he was, one of the most powerful men in America. The whole room turned. The cameras spun around. Thad walked straight up to the stage, but he didn't look at Ronan. He looked at Odessa, and there was something in his eyes, pride, pure pride. "You didn't need me," Thad said softly just to her. "You never needed anybody. You handled this all on your own." "I know," Odessa said, still guarded, still hurt. "I've been handling things on my own my whole life." Thad nodded slowly. Then he turned to the cameras. "Those who don't know me, my name is Thaddeus Cross. And yes, everything Ronan Blackwood has been saying about me is going to make headlines. So let me set the record straight, right here, right now, in front of all of you." He took a deep breath. "I did lie about who I was, not to steal anything. But because for the first time in my life, I met people who saw me as a human being and not a bank account. And I was a coward. I was afraid that if they knew the truth, I'd lose them." He looked at Odessa. "And I was right, I did." Lobby was completely silent now. "But I will not let Ronan Blackwood or anyone else exploit a 15-year-old boy," Thad continued, his voice hard now. He gestured to his lawyers. "As of this morning, Meridian Systems has established a foundation. A real one. It will fund the education of gifted young people from communities like Sunnyside with no strings attached. They keep every idea they create. They own their own futures, completely." He turned to Silas and his voice softened. "Silas, you don't owe me anything. You don't have to trust me. But your mind is a gift, and I will fight to make sure nobody ever tries to steal it from you again, even if you never speak to me another day in your life." Silas stared at him. And for the first time, the boy understood the difference. Ronan had wanted his mind. Thad wanted to protect him. The fallout was swift. Ronan Blackwood's scheme collapsed in front of the entire press. The exposed contract, the leaked message, the public humiliation, it destroyed his reputation completely. Within weeks, the board of Apex Grid forced him out of his own company. 10 years of revenge, gone in a single afternoon, undone not by Thad, but by a single mother he dared to underestimate. But the more important story was happening quietly back in Sunnyside. Thad didn't push. He gave Odessa space. He didn't shower her with gifts or money or grand gestures. He knew that wasn't what she wanted. What she wanted was harder to give, trust, so he earned it back slowly. He showed up. He kept his word. He fixed the faucet again, properly this time after actually learning how. He sat with Silas and helped him apply his genius to the new foundation. And little by little, brick by brick, he rebuilt what his lie had broken. One evening, months later, Odessa found him on the fire escape, looking out at the same skyline as before. "You know what's funny?" she said, sitting beside him. "I used to look at those buildings and think rich people were happy." Thad smiled. "And now I know a rich man who was so lonely he pretended to be poor just to feel something real." She shook her head. "That's about the saddest thing I ever heard." Thad laughed softly. "It was until a woman with nothing gave me everything." Odessa was quiet for a moment, then she said, "I got some news today. Yeah, I got accepted back into nursing school." She smiled, a real smile, the first one in months. "And before you say anything, I'm paying my own way. I got a scholarship." "Real one, I earned it. This one's mine." Thad's face lit up with pride. "Odessa, that's incredible." "I buried that dream a long time ago," she said quietly. "I forgot you're allowed to dig those things back up." And then slowly Odessa reached over and took his hand that wasn't so soft anymore after months of real work. "I'm not saying everything's fixed," she said, "but I'm saying I'm willing to try, if you're willing to always tell me the truth, even when it's hard." "Always," Thad said. "I promise." Behind them, the window slid open, and Silas poked his head out. "Are you two done being all mushy? Because Miss Erling made dinner and she's threatening us with the frying pan again if we let it get cold." Odessa and Thad laughed. And in that small apartment in Sunnyside, Texas, not the mansion in River Oaks, not the tower downtown, they found what Thad had been searching for his whole life. A home, a family, something money could never, ever buy. And so, my friends, we come to the end of Odessa's story. You know, this whole journey taught us something powerful. Because here's the truth. People will always show you who they are by what they want from you. Some will look at you and see something to use. And others will look at you and just want to stand beside you. Ronan saw Silas's mind and wanted to own it. Thad saw Silas's mind and wanted to protect it. That's the difference between someone who loves you and someone who just wants something from you. And never forget this, Odessa Whitfield had almost nothing. No money, no power, no fancy connections. But she had her dignity, her love for her son, and a sharp mind that no one could buy. And in the end, that made her stronger than a man with $12 billion. Real love, real family, isn't about what you can give someone. It's about who stays when you have nothing left to offer. And one more thing. If life has made you bury your dreams, the way Odessa buried nursing school, remember this. It is never, ever too late to dig them back up. Your dream is still waiting for you, so here's my question for you, and I want you to really think about it. Have you buried a dream that it's time to dig back up? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story touched your heart, do me a favor, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe if you're not already, because I've got more stories like this coming your way. Until next time, my friends, take care of yourself, and never let anyone make you forget your worth. I'll see you in the next one.